Sporting an iridescent green instead of the traditional blue and white of most KWGs, it is the iconic KWG Starter of Medarot 9, KWG12 Monjiro, with a kit of Cybercore, Sword, Break Hammer, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Rush, which buffs success and power of all equipped melee parts if the number equipped exceeds that of the targets. Now, truth be told, I've been waiting on this guy for quite some time now, so it's going to be really nice seeing him in game. The iridescent sheen on his body definitely has not left him and does retain that from his days in Medarot 9, so it is going to be really nice seeing yet another KWG, especially one of my particular favorites in the game officially. But just to go over his stats briefly, Cybercore is a support skill that is radar side essentially, so 30% buff to success to all allies, as well as removes any stealth or conceal debuffs on the enemy side. I believe it also buffs support. It also buffs those skills on the ally side as well. Basic sword, you can never go wrong with it. Conventional and basic melee attack. Break Hammer is honestly his biggest charm though, as it does give him, as a standard KWG type, that extra niche with a heavy punish, with gravity attribute attacks, with a higher crit rate and higher damage if he's attacking someone with 2 or more. The Rush ability honestly is also a nice addition to him though, as it does grant him additional bonus to power if he has more melee parts equipped than his target. Unfortunately, however, that is kind of where his niche kind of ends though. As nice of an ability as Rush is, because of Monjiro's kit is 2 melees and a support, he's not necessarily using it to its full advantage. So maybe unless you use the legs on a dedicated melee type, say for instance, I'm just going to use Sagehorn as an example, who's triple melee, basic sword, and use these legs on him, then you can make better use of it. Otherwise, if you use Monjiro as a pure set, he's only going to be having 2 equipped, which means he's only going to be getting that bonus if he's attacking someone who has 2 or less melee parts equipped, ideally even 1 or none, in order to make use of that. However, aside from that, he does have some very solid stats across the board, which is a very interesting change, because in Medarot 9, he was just a little bit on the sluggish side in experience when I played it on my 3DS way back, so it is nice that he did get a little bit of a speed buff, and honestly, that speed buff he got is really, really nice, though. 873 mobility for those legs, which is honestly fantastic. That puts him almost on the same tier as Gokudo at base speed at 889. He is lacking just a little bit in the evasion department at 884, shoot resist at 737, but melee resist at 1348, so he can tank a hit pretty decently, but he definitely and absolutely has speed on his side with that 873 mobility, especially also with high heat and cool on his right arm sword, heat and cool on the head as well in the decent 600s. The left arm, on the other hand, with Break Hammer, does have a little bit more of a sluggish hit to it, so that one may take a little more time to charge, but again, with it being heavy punish with the extra success, he can make up for that very, very easily. So all this aside, and with all this being said, as a pure set score, I would rate him a pretty solid 7.5 out of 10, maybe even an 8 in some cases. I promise, guys, there's no bias in this one. I swear, because he still has some very nice conventional balance as a melee fighter, especially as an iconic KWG type. The heavy punish also is incredibly useful on him as well for the higher crit rate and the HV punish. So definitely recommend making use of him as well. If you use him as a pure set, he can serve a very solid conventional melee role very easily, but also convert relatively decently and quickly to dedicated nuking if you're fighting someone, say for instance like Death Providence or God Emperor or Parallel Deuce, or someone anyway who's packing triple heavy essentially. As mixed parts, I would rate him very equally at a 7.5 out of 10 as well, for the reasons stated above. He has easily one of the fastest biped legs in the game, ranking up there right next to Gokudo essentially. Heavy punish on the Break Hammer you can never go wrong with on any build. Basic sword also is a fantastic melee skill to make use of. Cybercore is something you probably would make use of a lot, unless you have someone else on the team that actually uses or relies on support skills in order to actually have some kind of benefit to it. So unless you're someone who really just wants to have it for the sake of having the Monjiro mugshot on your team, I'd say the head is probably going to be the lesser used part of the full set, but that aside, whether you use him as mixed parts or as a pure set, Monjiro absolutely will not fail you, and you will not be sorry using him at any team that requires a conventional and rather speedy melee fighter.